Continuing our exploration of Star Wars Tales Volume 1, we have Life, Death, and the Living Force, an adventure with Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn. The story opens up on a teeming jungle world called Aurorua. High amidst the forest canopy, Obi-Wan is attempting to interact with what he thinks is a cute, baby-faced lifeform poking out of the foliage. As he draws nearer, however, he's suddenly ambushed by a worm insectoid-like creature armored in what looks like a chitin-based carapace. Reacting quickly, Obi-Wan manages to slice off the pincers before fleeing the scene in search of his master. Qui-Gon informs his Padawan that they won't need to pursue the beast because it's already been mortally wounded by the lightsaber. We learn that it's called a Squallyhawk, which is a deceptively comical name for such a fearsome beast. Obi-Wan expresses his desire for the creature to die, but Qui-Gon opens up the central idea of the story, the living force, by mentioning how the Squallyhawk is an important part of the web of life on the planet. We then meet Mosco Bulpa, which I have to say is one of the most Star Wars sounding names I've heard in a long time. His species are known as Mogganites, and Qui-Gon freed him from a Blogwar snare, which I assume is a trap of some pygmy-like species that must roam the planet. Qui-Gon wants to take Mosco back to their camp to help him recover from his injuries. Obi-Wan's not too enthused about the idea. I thought this was a neat little nod to how annoyed Obi-Wan was with Jar Jar Binks in Episode 1. It seems he was never too keen to pick up traveling companions in his earlier days. Mosco, however, demonstrates zero gratitude for Qui-Gon. He calls the treehouse they've made camp in a dump, and acts like an entitled twat when rummaging through the Jedi's food stocks. Obi-Wan can't believe that Qui-Gon is still helping Mosco despite his rudeness, but Qui-Gon uses it as a lesson for his Padawan, saying, "He is giving us an opportunity to serve the living force without the remotest chance of reward." Obi-Wan then says they'll be rewarded with slit throats, as Mogganites are known to be the most treacherous species in the galaxy. Qui-Gon isn't all too worried, however. Maybe he even expects Mosco to betray them later. But he tells his apprentice to get some rest and leave the situation alone. When Mosco has had his fill, he decides to leave. As he does so, he suspiciously asks if it's just the two Jedi there. Qui-Gon says, yes, just we two, as if he kind of knows Mosco's treacherous intent. Later that night, our sleeping duo is ambushed by Mosco and his gang, but they're no match for the Jedi. After the killing is done, Qui-Gon says they have to leave, as the balance of their location has been disturbed by the violence, and with more raiders on the way, he'd rather not have to kill anyone else. Obi-Wan then asks Qui-Gon why he helped Mosco in the first place, then later killed him and his gang, seemingly with no remorse. On the next panel, Qui-Gon gives Obi-Wan his reasoning. He says, "Obi-Wan, this universe is full of creatures who act without the slightest understanding of what drives them to do what they do. My actions are determined by the will of the living force. I fed that poor little brute because he was hungry. I killed him because if I had let him kill me, I would no longer be able to do my work as a Jedi." Obi-Wan then asks, "You didn't kill him because you didn't want to die?" To which Qui-Gon responds, "When the Force tells me the time has come for me to die, Obi-Wan, I will die willingly." This is an important moment for fleshing out Qui-Gon's character. He's one of the most present, moment-minded Jedi in this series. He helped Mosco because in that moment he was a creature in need, and he killed Mosco because there was no other choice. And besides that, Mosco brought his fate on himself by choosing to attack the Jedi. Less now-focused Jedi, like Obi-Wan, might have not trusted or helped Mosco to begin with, but Qui-Gon clearly tries to go with the flow as much as possible, addressing the needs at hand rather than worrying about the future. He then says that when it's his time to die, he will accept it as the will of the Force, meaning with peace, which is a nod to how he later meets his end in The Phantom Menace. While searching for a new place to make camp, Obi-Wan considers a mountain in the distance, but Qui-Gon asks his Padawan if he senses something off about it. They indeed feel more uncomfortable as they draw nearer to the mountain. They discover a sinister-looking structure which is the source of their growing unease. Qui-Gon says it's a sacrificial altar to a Cylon, which is a Lovecraftian-esque primordial creature of the dark side. Obi-Wan thought they were just myths, like Baracles or Gluths. This comic really approaches Harry Potter levels of absurdity with the Star Wars names, but they fit right into the world. Kenobi wants to flee, but Jinn insists they push on ahead, as he feels something drawing him into the cavernous interior of the structure. Obi-Wan isn't too keen on fighting the Cylon, but Qui-Gon insists that they must rid the universe of it. He doesn't expect Obi-Wan to accompany him, but when his Padawan says there's no way he'll let him fight alone, he says that Obi-Wan is doing credit to the proud Jedi tradition. As they make their way into the altar, Qui-Gon continues to remind his apprentice to keep his focus in the present. As he tells his Padawan not to think, but to act, they're ambushed by the many-mouthed Cylon. Despite the grotesque image of the beast before them, the two Jedi Knights emerge unscathed from the combat. After their victory, Obi-Wan asks his master if they were truly right for killing the Cylon, as it felt wrong to kill such a large life form that wasn't harming anybody. Trying to learn the earlier lesson taught to him regarding the Squally Hawk being an essential part of the ecosystem, Obi-Wan wonders if the Cylon doesn't likewise have a natural place in the scheme of things, and if it was wrong to actively seek it out and destroy it. Qui-Gon says it was unpleasant for him too, and that there's no way to know why the living force directed them to slay the Cylon. Perhaps it was an act of retribution for an atrocity long ago committed, or it was liberation from a profane existence. He then says that as Jedi, they will sometimes be called upon to do things they don't want to do if they are to serve the will of the Force. The story comes to a close with Qui-Gon assuring Obi-Wan that they are a part of something much larger, and not to despair at the work a Jedi must do. I really enjoyed this story, because the central theme is fun to unpack. For me, it boils down to this question: can any creature which exists in the universe be considered unnatural? And if not, then do we have any right to play the role of exterminator? There's a canon comic book arc called Yoda's Secret War which touches on this theme a bit too, when Yoda says that all life is precious, even an insect. I wonder if that applies to primordial dark side creatures. And in my own life, I've spent the past few years trying to catch and release spiders in our apartment, rather than killing them. Feels like the more Jedi thing to do. So despite the fact that the Cylon obviously looks grotesque, does that mean its existence is unjustified? Are primordial creatures of the dark side naturally wrong just for existing, or do they too have a place in the cosmic ecosystem? Perhaps if we knew more about primordial dark side creatures we could say, but it does seem to be the will of the Force rather than Qui-Gon's own motives that prompted the decision to fight the Cylon. On another note, I mentioned in the Extinction video how that story hypes me up for what a live-action Vader series would be like. In a similar vein, this story makes me crave a show that centers on the life and times of Qui-Gon Jinn, how he became a Jedi, his apprenticeship under Dooku, his taking on Obi-Wan as a Padawan, and all the adventures he has leading up to Episode 1. I think it would be a great show to explore Qui-Gon's tension with the Jedi Order. He's also a fan-favorite character, so I'm sure there are many besides myself that would love this show. Let me know what you think about life, death, and the living Force, or the idea of a Qui-Gon live-action series in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.